Hello friends, happy Eastertide to everyone. I was thinking about following up a little bit with some ideas of sort of what to replace in our life or our family's lives and things of that nature as far as, well, technology and all that goes, but now maybe something positive as a substitute. And I was thinking as far as that goes that it might help before we really get into anything too specific there to, well, maybe use the time to get some principles down, some sort of baselines and foundations. And it got me thinking actually that, we're all kind of looking ahead and waiting for the moment when the doors are open and we can all rush out back into the world. And will it hurry up and get here? And actually, I was almost thinking, I'm a little worried because we're running out of time. And I say that because I think there's a big grace that's being offered to us right now. And it's the grace to do those things that we usually say we don't have time to do. And so, we know we have to give a certain amount of time every day to our prayers or to, cleaning the house or structuring things or education of the children and all these things. And it's usually just like, I don't have enough time, or I always feel like we're pulled in all these different directions. And there's all these social obligations and these different things that we have to do. And I work too much. And so we don't usually have time. Well, now we're kind of forced to have time. And maybe the big grace that's being offered to us is the chance to actually put the things in place that need to be there. The things that are meant to be our, really like the basement of our houses, the things that everything can rest on, sort of those pillars of the Catholic life that are going to help us throughout the whole rest of our lives. But now we actually have the chance to really kind of like focus positively on them and really try and build them up. So what I guess I'll be talking about is some ideas for using this time to sanctify the family, to make family life something actually of the faith. And we're going to base it all on just basic Catholic principles, as well as the good principles of St. Thomas Aquinas, as far as even just human psychology goes and philosophy, in approachable terms, I hope. And then hopefully we'll get to some practical applications as well. Maybe not in this video, maybe in future ones, should there be future ones, who knows. But one little side note, just as far as that goes, practical applications. I thought it'd be worth mentioning, as far as practical applications go, that we usually are asked to make things more practical. Too often the sermons are very lofty and spiritual matters and all these things, but what we really need are practical things. Can you give us some pointers? We need some tips. We need some things that I can go home and do. And it's a very valid request. And in fact, one that I can very much relate to. In the seminary, in Father LaRue's class especially, we would often ask him, Father, practically speaking, if someone came and this, and this, or as someone came and asked this, and this, and he would always stop us in our tracks and say, you have to ask a different question. He would refuse to give us practical application answers because he didn't want to limit us. Because if we always, and especially when we're talking about things of the faith or things that we need to address a large amount of people with, we limit ourselves if we're going to stay on just practical matters. What we want to do actually is grab the principles, the ideas that can govern a whole bunch of different practical matters. And if we really understand those, then we'll be able to apply ourselves to the different things. And that's what they really tried to hammer into us at the seminary. So I think an example of that would be, if this was actually like a cooking show and I was just going to teach you all how to make spaghetti, practically speaking, or not even spaghetti, but family dinner. I can say, okay, well, practically speaking, today I'm going to show you how to make spaghetti, because I'm not just going to tell you about dinner. That's too spiritual. It has to be something concrete. And so, you get noodles and you get your tomato sauce, and then someone's already saying, well, Father, actually I'm gluten-free. It happens to lots of people. Okay, well, in that case, you not necessarily need to have noodles. You can get rice, and then someone else might be, rice intolerant, or someone who might not be able to partake in the nightshade vegetable department, or whatever it is. The more practical we get, the more details I'm going to try and give you for this dinner, the more limited I'm going to get, because some people perhaps don't have an oven, or some people don't have any meatballs or meat at all, or some people can't eat one thing or another, and so I'm limiting myself every time I'm giving a practical detail, because there's one more person I'm not able to approach. But if I can stay on an ideal level and give you the ideas of these are the principles of making a dinner, insofar as you're able, and with the materials you have at hand, try and balance it out. Have something of starch and vegetables and meat, and try and make a balanced meal with as much as you can. And I can give you those principles, and then you can take them and apply them to your own situation. That's what we usually try and work for. And I think it's worth kind of pointing that out as something to keep in mind for anything from a sermon to some of these talks, because they're usually going to be on the higher level of principles, but not because they can't be made practical. It's that we kind of have to take those principles and say, okay, now what can I do in my life, practically speaking? Don't despair. Hopefully we will as well get into some practical suggestions as well as we go along. It's not impossible. All right, so principles, ideas for using this time that we're running out of to sanctify the family. We want to be able to come out of this, I think, would be a good goal, with a firm spiritual life, with habits and times of family prayer together, or even things of health and order in the house. Usually we have so many things pulling us different directions, but now we do have time. And this is the grace that's offered. We have the chance now to, as much as we're able, form stable and balanced habits of a Catholic life. And I use habits intentionally. St. Thomas will talk all about habits. And usually when we think of habit, we say, I have a bad habit of chewing my nails or something like that. A habit is something that actually we use all the time. It's something we're designed to do by God. It's very much part of us to form habits. And if we weren't able to do it, everything would be very difficult. Imagine if you didn't have the habit of being able to walk or talk easily. It would be like having to relearn it every single time you had to, go get a glass of water, and then you'd have to relearn how to drink. But no, we form these habits, and a habit is basically, it's a stable quality. It's something about us that we've practiced, or that is sort of us, something that we've been trained ourselves to do, some sort of stable adaptation capability that we have that makes it so that we can do certain things easily. I have the habit of driving a car. I don't even have to think about it anymore. I have the habit of riding a bike. I don't have to worry so much about balance anymore. I can do it easily because I have that habit. And our habits are the building blocks of our life. We really kind of rise and fall with our habits. And the better habits we form, the better we are able to approach life. And the worse habits we form, the harder it is for us to rise above, as it were. So habits really do make things easier for us. We have a lot of them. And they provide sort of a structure for us. And we don't usually like that sort of notion. Structure. It sounds imposing. It sounds boring. But when we actually give ourselves structure with forming habits, we feel a lot better. To look at it another way, we don't like what's uncertain. If you're getting in the car and you're like, well, I have to make it to San Diego somehow, don't really know, I'm just going to start driving. That's pretty stressful. But the more we really know all the different components, the more structure we have in something, the more at ease we feel. We don't like the uncertain. We don't feel like we're stepping off into the unknown every day. In fact, the more structure and solidity we have in our human lives, the more at peace we are. Generally speaking, you'll hear people prefer things like, well, I didn't like everything about boarding school, but I really liked the structure. A lot of people will graduate from a boarding school and will feel kind of so ill at ease at home that they end up going to the military or something like that because they need that structure. And it's because it's very human. We need the structure of schools, but we need structure in our families. We really need structure in our family life to feel secure and to be able to build off of that structure all the most important things for the rest of our life. The problem is we don't usually build these sort of habits. It's not something we really received so much, especially in this day and age that's so uncertain and so unknown and so many distractions. We especially don't usually build good habits of the spiritual life. We don't have lots of time to, perhaps. We don't have enough just simple, natural peace and natural foundation to build spiritual habits and structure off of. But that's what the Catholic life's all about. That's what the life of virtue is all about. Virtue, as you've probably heard from Father Leith by now, virtues are habits. They're qualities about us that make it easier for us to perform good acts. And they don't come out of nowhere. They don't come from just, well, I guess I'm going to be charitable now. It doesn't work like that. It's something we have to practice and we have to pray for and we have to ask for the grace. But on the natural level, we really have to exercise it, just like we had to keep trying before we can ride that bike smoothly and easily. So to live a good Catholic life means building good habits. It means building virtue, and virtue based on real principles. Our good habits got to be really based on the truths of our faith, the good and revealed truths of grace, of redemption, of the sacraments, all that sort of thing. And if we have a life that's built up of good habits, it's a lot easier for us to live on a better level of life. It's a lot easier for us to attain our ends, at least in the spiritual level and on the level of grace. And eventually it's just going to lead us to our progressive perfection through continued good acts. And we're able to do that. That's exactly how we were designed by God to save our souls, to take our life, this sort of like undefined existence, and structure it. Make our map that leads to heaven, structure our road, firmly mold our life. We're not simply meant to just always be floating out there in the air. But unfortunately, that's the tendency of the age, and that's the sort of thing that we usually are brought up on. We need to focus on a life of virtue, and in virtue needs to be built on good objective principles, not sentiment. It's not things we're going to do to make us feel better. It's not egoism. It's not things we're going to do so that people can notice how good of a fellow I am. No, it's acts, it's habits, it's structure that lead us towards God and let him in to us that much more, to grow into us. It's really through a lack of normal good Catholic virtues, normal good Catholic stability and structure working towards our gradual perfection. It's through a lack of that we don't usually progress. For example, it's a very common complaint, I'm going to confession all the time. Sometimes I'm, making it to daily mass, receiving Holy Communion. That was a lot of us just a few weeks ago. And I just don't feel like I'm getting any holier. Well, what are your normal dispositions? Is, receiving Holy Communion every day and going to confession every 2 weeks, is that, the bulk of your spiritual life? Or are you bolstering your dispositions? Are you opening up your heart to be able to receive our Lord that much more every day by your own personal effort, your own prayer, your own asking him to enlarge your soul? Creating those dispositions by our life of virtue, which is our life of habits, which rests on a structure and which goes all the way down to just the normal structure and peace of soul that we have growing up in our life. And so it's a lack of that sort of life of virtue that, usually blocks us from being able to receive all the graces from the Mass and the sacraments that we can expect from them. And so that's why I think now that a lot of these things are taken away from us, perhaps the grace that our Lord is offering us right now is, hey, This is your chance to actually work on the dispositions and the habits and all that to be able to receive all those graces that I'm reserving for you in the sacraments, because they're going to come back eventually. We simply can't, live in the living room for the rest of our lives, surely. So maybe this is a chance that we can have to make those openings a little bit bigger for grace. If this is getting a little detached and abstract, don't worry. We'll review soon and try and put everything back into its place. I realize it might just start launching into the deep a little bit. Well, we don't usually progress in the use of the sacraments. We don't usually have a progressive, virtuous life. And, well, it's usually just comes down to a few things. We don't really want to change our lives too much. We don't like that idea. We don't think we need to change, perhaps. And if we don't have that conviction that I need to keep working progressively to become more a child of God, more a saint, if that's not a conviction in our life, we're never going to try and change. So we're never going to keep working on building habits of virtue, and we're never going to be able to enlarge our souls to receive the grace of the sacraments more. So we paralyze ourselves just because I don't want to, I don't think I need to, I'm not going to try and change for the better. Or perhaps we really don't have time, or at least we use that excuse. I just don't have time. I just don't have time to do all this prayer thing, or to, do spiritual reading or whatever it is. I don't have time. There's too many things I need to do. We'll talk about how that excuse doesn't really work. Or perhaps we have realized we need to try. We've given ourselves some time, but at the end of the day, we don't persevere in it. And that's actually the hardest. But think of any habit you've ever formed. It only is perfected through perseverance. Yeah, over and over and over again. I remember in high school, just wishing, or not even wishing, giving up on the idea that I could ever, play a musical instrument. It just seemed like that was one of those things that either God blessed you with that beautiful gift of being able to play music or not. And then someone told me, well, no, I'm just going to start practicing guitar and I'm just going to do it every day until I can. So, well, I guess I'll try that. And so we did the same 2 chords over and over and over and over and over and over again for about 3 months until we can do them without thinking. And then we were able to do more and more. And now, it only takes so many millions of repetitions before you can play an instrument, at least at a basic level. It really comes down to that. That's how humans are designed. It takes perseverance to build those habits. Okay, so here's a little summary. We have some time right now because we're all more or less locked in our homes still. And grace is always being offered in every single situation. What is the grace that God is offering us today? I think it's worth us talking about how we can use this time to sort of identify both the holes in our spiritual life, the things that we kind of know are lacking, maybe our dispositions to receiving grace from the sacraments, or particular virtues or vices that we may have, or virtues rather, that we need to work on. So identifying both the holes, but also like the necessary building blocks of our own spiritual life, and especially of our family's spiritual life. That's what we have time, I think, right now to work on. And I think when I say working on our spiritual life and our family's spiritual life, I do mean firstly by removing bad habits, things that don't help us. That's why we started with, warnings about technology and all that. And then also starting off and also preserving in good habits of life, good Catholic, normal things that we should be persevering in every single day based on good Catholic principles. Really, I think we have time to put some Catholic structure in our lives, in our families. And if we have the conviction that this is worth doing it, we really can make it happen. We sort of do need that conviction. Well, I'm already talking a little bit long, but I'll give you at least the basic goals, and then we can keep going from here later on. They told us not to talk so long if we can help it, but we can't always help it. So where to start? We have to start at the very beginning. And actually, believe it or not, the very beginning of almost anything is the end. That's a classic principle of Thomistic philosophy. If you want to know the direction you're going to go on your journey, you got to know where you want to get to. What's the end? What's our goal? What are we working for? This is going to be mostly applied to families, but it can be applied to any single one of us, of course, in our own particular life. But why are we living the life that we're living? Why are we pursuing the various things that we are? Why did you get married? Was it just only as far as, well, we're in love? That's what you do when you're in love. You get married. Was there or is there a looking farther down the road and seeing there will be souls now dependent on me? Why are we working this job? Why do the diapers need to be changed and the laundry need to be washed and folded over and over and over again? Why are we doing any of this? We really do need an answer. Otherwise, at some point, we're going to just feel a big gaping emptiness in our life, whether or not we're married or looking. We need a real answer, and the answer needs to be the salvation of souls. It needs to be, of course, the glory of God is the crowning point, but closer to home and connected with that glory is the salvation of our own soul, and then the soul's dependent on us. That's what we mean when we say the principle that has to guide all of our decisions is love. If you love, you will want the salvation of someone else's soul, no matter what. And that goal, that number one goal, the salvation of my soul and the soul's dependent on me, that has to dictate everything in our lives. It has to be the main reason. We need to care about it, and nothing can trump it ever. There can't ever be a moment where we would have to compromise the chance and the likelihood or the best bet at our children's salvation for the sake of something else, be it, the chance to become the richest person in the world. Of course not. Nothing can trump this. Love has to be the foundation of everything we're doing in our families. And so that's our first goal that we're going to keep in mind when we launch into the idea of forming structure and building habits. Our first goal is to save the souls that are connected to me. So both my soul and the ones that God has entrusted to me. Our second goal, giving us our direction, how we're going to start structuring things and laying things out. It's, sort of the thing that's going to be the vehicle of the salvation of our family souls. It's not quite so easy all the time. Sometimes it is, as baptizing them, and then that's it. They're going to become saints. Sometimes you are graced with such children. But for most of them, you need to form them. You need to get them to that point where they have their own tools to build their own lives of virtue and become saints through their own will with God's grace. And so the second goal is it's sort of the formation, it's the education, it's the natural perfection, it's the good habits that we want to form in our children. We can call this maybe just the formation of our children. It's simply not the case at all that God instituted marriage just so that there can be new souls born into the world. Those new souls are for heaven, and they are now with wide open mouths of potency, waiting to be filled with whatever is going to be put in front of them, so that they can either be led towards their own salvation or not. And so we have to always keep in mind that the principles of having a Catholic family, it's not just so that I produce children for God, it's so that I produce saints. And so the education, the formation of my children is essential. And that's right up there with salvation of my children, the souls that God has given me, and their education and formation. It's right there because one rests on top of the other. So that has to be more important than anything else below it. That has to kind of shake us a little bit, has to scare us a little bit to know I need to do whatever I can to make my children saints, not just to keep them alive. Because we're going to have to talk about, things that we let our children do and stuff like that. But if it's not helping them become a saint, even if it is helping them stay alive, what's the trade-off? So the third goal, so first, salvation. Second, education, formation. Third is just, well, it's sort of the order that needs to be there for these sort of things to take place. If the family life is absolute chaos, if there's no structure, if there's no order, if there's no peace of soul in my own personal life, if there's no peace within the family, well then how can we build an education and a formation off of that, and how can we build their salvation off of that? With God's grace, of course, nothing is impossible. We have to do what we can. And the last thing, sort of at the bottom of the list, is just the material concerns. It's the money we make, it's the house we live in, it's the clothes for the kid, it's, material support, it's our social obligations, it's all that sort of thing. The things that everyone worries about, as we read in Scripture, even the heathens worry about that sort of thing. And our Lord says, don't worry about those, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. That's what we're going to focus on. And so if you can imagine sort of a pyramid, and this is going to be the rest of whatever I get a chance to talk to you about, at the top, our highest principle, what am I going to do with this time especially to form our family life around this number one goal of saving our souls? That's what we're judging everything off of, and nothing can trump that, especially not things like making money or hanging out with the whoever's at the end of the day. Like none of that can ever come close to touching what is most important: saving my children's soul. That's our love for them. After that, nothing can touch the importance of the education and formation of our children. After that, the next one down is just peace and order in the family. And then at the bottom, the things that we still want to structure as much as we can are, our material concerns, the outside of the family things and stuff like that. And believe it or not, if we turn that, image upside down, they become a foundation for each other. Sorry. I'm healthy, I promise. They become a foundation for each other. Our material structure gives us the foundation for peace and order, which gives us the foundation for education and formation, which gives us the foundation for, the salvation of our souls. But then also, if the salvation of souls is our keystone, if that's our number one goal, then everything else can rest upon it, and we can expect everything from the help of God, because, well, that's what he asked of us in the first place. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. Okay. Well, we didn't get to anything practical, I realize, but we do have to start with these very firm principles. We're going to try and use some time, especially the time we have at home, to put some things in place, things in our own mind, things in our families, things that can help us use this time so that when we come out of it, we're going to be stronger Catholics, more balanced Catholics, more structured and ordered Catholics, and we're going to be able to use these pillars for the rest of our life. How are we going to form these habits, this structure? We're going to look at the principles, the most important things, and then take them and apply them to our given situation. In my particular household, how can I put peace and order? How can I work for the formation of the children? How can I be putting everything towards their salvation? So I guess it's just something to think about for now. And if we get another chance in the future, God willing, we'll start looking at sort of like the more practical and detailed ways to approach that sort of question. God bless you all, and I hope you have a very blessed Paschal time, and please spend lots of time outside because it's beautiful out.